This episode deals with topics of death, child and infant death, and morbid subject matter, as well as some era-specific religious viewpoints that may not be shared by all audiences today. Listener discretion is advised. I'm sure we all have at least one memory of visiting the home of a relative, whether it be an aunt or a grandparent, and seeing the progression of family photos line the wall of the staircase or long corridor. When you scan the images, you likely see smiling family members dressed in their best, looking as though it had taken little effort to achieve such poise. The image likely evoked a sense of nostalgia, maybe even a giggle or two, depending on the backstory that might come along with the image. What if while you were scanning the photos, you came across an old one? Maybe yellowing in color or cracking along the edges from wear and exposure. What if that image in many ways was similar to the others, as it showed a family of three, posed side by side, holding affectionately to one another? But something about that image just catches you as off. Unlike the other photos, no one is smiling in this one. The young girl in the middle, who at first seemed to be leaning against her parents affectionately, now looks more like she was in fact being held up by them. What if, as you lean closer to the image, examining the young girl's crisp image in contrast to the more blurred of the parents, a chilling reality creeps through your mind? The girl was dead. Hey spooky friends, and welcome back to Let's Talk Spooky, the show where folklore creeps out of the shadows and spooky stories dance around firelight. I'm your host, Shauna. And tonight we're digging into the eerie beauty and haunting history of a forgotten Victorian practice that captured more than just the faces of loved ones. It captured farewells also. So gather close, light a candle, and let's talk spooky. What does it mean to remember? In our current era, it's easy to lock a moment of time, to look back on that moment weeks, months, even years later, and smile to ourselves. All we need to do to achieve this is simply take out our phones, snap a picture, and call it a day. However, this relatively recent freedom was almost unheard of 200 years ago, and something we kind of take for granted today. Before 1822, the only way to capture a moment in time or someone's likeliness was through art, and many times that likeliness was at the hand of the artist's perception of what they were painting, which, as we have seen many of times in old paintings of royal families, prominent people across the world, that likeliness tends to be a bit redundant. When the use of photography gained popularity in the late 1840s, with a type of photography called daguerreotype, a small, lightly detailed picture on polished silver cost far less than the leading commissioned portrait of the time. It was not surprising that it became fashionable not only for the living, but for the dead as well. The first rise of death, or what is now known as postpartum photography, was primarily used on children due to the rise of measles, diphtheria, scarlet fever, and rubella, all of which could be fatal. Many lower and middle class families could not afford walls full of images of their loved ones, so preserving the last memory of a past child was a way to allow the grieving parents a bit of comfort. Often these photos were of living family members posed side by side with a deceased one, whether it be a child, sometimes a father, or a mother. It gave the family one last moment in time to hold on to. One last moment of wholeness. Though its popularity also gained skepticism among a number of religious communities who called the practice blasphemous, stating, and I quote, "attempted to outdo a job reserved for the Almighty," even going as far as believing that the act of taking someone's photo would trap the spirit of the person inside the image. Regardless of the tension and fears that postpartum photography brought, the popularity did see a gradual rise in Britain during the 1850s, but so did a new type of photography. For those who found propping up their dead loved ones too morbid for their taste, they sought the assistance of spirit photographers. This individual was said to be able to take pictures that showed the spirits of deceased loved ones were still among their living family members. Developed by a man named William Mumler in 1862, a time which, if you are a fan of the paranormal, you might also recognize as the era of spiritualist movement. Coincidence? Not sure. Mumler was an amateur photographer and a silver engraver by trade. Local to Boston at the time, he decided one day to take a self-portrait and noticed once the photo had been developed that he was not alone in the image. From there, he took the image to a friend who had determined that the image must be that of a ghost. And such, the popularity of ghost photography grew. Grieving families would visit Mumler, paying large sums of money, close to $400 per image in today's standards, to catch an image of their deceased loved ones by their side. Now, Mumler couldn't always guarantee that it would be the deceased loved one of their choosing, but he was quick to help them identify who it might be, with a little persuasion. Eventually, his scheme caught up to him, causing him to relocate his business to New York City, where he was eventually arrested for fraud in 1869. But due to the lack of proof on his photography methods, he was eventually acquitted of all charges. So what do you think? Were spirit photos real? Were spirits really returning to photobomb their loved ones one last time? I guess we will never know for certain. My final story is one that might blur your belief, though, whether spirits really do come back for one last photo. In 1919, at the Royal Air Force Airfield, where Sir Victor Goddard Squadron was stationed, the men gathered for a formal portrait. A simple group photo meant to capture the returning peace and survival post-World War I. The uniforms were pressed, caps were straightened, and medals glistened in the morning sun. The shutter clicked, one photograph. One moment frozen in time. But time, it seems, wasn't the only thing captured that day. You see, 2 days earlier, the squadron had suffered quite a tragic loss. Freddy Jackson, a well-liked aircraft mechanic, had died in a very gruesome accident. His head was struck by an airplane propeller while he worked on the line. The men mourned him quietly, his funeral taking place just hours before the photo was taken. Weeks later, when the photo was developed and passed around, the squadron members paused in stunned silence. Behind one of the airmen, on the very top row, fourth to the left, was a face, faint, transparent, yet unmistakably human and hauntingly familiar. One by one, the men recognized the same features, the same lopsided grin, and the same unmistakable cap. It was Freddy Jackson. So, what do you guys think? Were these just clever tricks of early photography? Or did these images truly capture something from beyond? Postmortem and spirit photography may seem eerie in today's standards, But for many in the Victorian and post-Victorian eras, these were an act of love. Parting gifts meant to ease grief, preserve memory, and maybe, just maybe, prove that death wasn't the end. If you want to see some of the photographs we talked about today, including the ghostly face of Freddy Jackson, head over to our Instagram page at Let's Talk Spooky Podcast. And if you have your own ghostly photo or family tale, we absolutely want to hear it. Send it our way at letstalkspookypodcast@gmail.com. You might even hear it in a future episode. Thanks for joining me in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating, reviewing on your favorite podcast platform, and hit that follow button so you never miss a new episode. And it helps more spooky souls find our campfire. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your candles lit, and remember, sometimes the photo you take might have a little more than you bargained for. Until next time, stay spooky. This episode was written, researched, and produced by me, Shauna. All research and sources can be found in the show notes below. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you again in the next episode.